At 2:47 p.m. on December 18, 1944, Private First Class Dale Hutchins crouched in the gunner's seat of an M4 Sherman tank outside Bastogne, Belgium, watching a German Tiger's 88mm gun swing toward them from 900 yards away. 22 years old, former farm mechanic from Nebraska, 7 weeks in combat, 3 seconds before the Tiger fired and killed everyone inside. The math was brutal and simple. A Tiger's frontal armor was 100 millimeters thick. A Sherman 75mm gun couldn't penetrate it at any range. Not at 500 yards, not at 100 yards. Not even if you rammed the barrel against the Tiger's glacis plate and fired point blank. American doctrine said, avoid Tigers. Call in air support. Wait for tank destroyers. Never engage frontally. Never fight fair. But Bastogne was surrounded. No air support, no tank destroyers. No choice but to die. The first crew Hutchins watched burn belonged to his best friend, Corporal Vincent Delgado. December 4th, outside Savalat. Delgado was the loader in Sergeant Webb's Sherman. They'd survived North Africa together, Sicily, Normandy. Webb spotted a Tiger 1,600 yards, tried to maneuver for a flank shot. The Tiger's gunner was faster. One round through the turret front. Delgado was loading when the shell hit. The propellant charges he was holding ignited instantly. He died screaming. Hutchins heard him on the radio, heard Delgado begging God to make it stop, heard the screaming fade to nothing. Delgado's body burned in that Sherman for 3 hours before recovery crews could reach it. He was 24 years old, had a wife in Arizona, had twin sons he'd never met, born 3 weeks after he shipped overseas. The second crew was Lieutenant Raymond Foster's. December 11th, Foster commanded Hutchins' platoon. Carm officer, 2 years in combat, taught Hutchins everything about loading under fire. His crew engaged a Tiger near Houffalize using standard doctrine, tried to maneuver for sidearm shots while the Tiger was distracted. The Tiger had support. A second Tiger flanked them, fired from 900 yards, penetrated the hull. The driver and assistant driver died in the initial hit. Foster and his gunner burned alive, trying to escape through hatches that had warped shut from the heat. Hutchins heard Foster screaming on the radio too, heard him begging someone to shoot him. The screaming lasted 40 seconds. By mid-December, the 9th Armored Division had lost 43 Shermans to Tigers. 43 crews, over 200 men dead or wounded. The pattern never changed. Sherman spots Tiger, Sherman tries to maneuver, Tiger shoots first, Sherman burns, loader dies loading. The problem wasn't courage. American tank crews were brave. The problem wasn't training. They knew their jobs. The problem was physics. A Sherman couldn't kill a Tiger from the front. Period. Impossible. End of discussion. Unless you did something insane. Unless you hit the exact same spot on the Tiger's armor 3 times in 60 seconds. Hutchins had grown up on a farm in Nebraska repairing tractors with his father. His father taught him that metal doesn't break clean, it cracks. When you hammer the same spot on a piece of steel over and over, microscopic fractures spread from the impact point. The metal weakens. Eventually, it fails. Tiger armor worked the same way. First 75mm round created stress fractures. Second round expanded those cracks. Third round punched through the weakened plate and killed the Tiger. 3 shots, same spot, Tiger dies. But hitting the exact same point on a moving target at 1,200 yards was impossible. The gunner's sight had crosshairs, not precision aiming marks. First round hit somewhere on the Tiger's glacis plate. Second round hit 3 feet left or 2 feet high. By the time you loaded the third round, the Tiger had fired back and killed you.
Hutchins needed a way to mark the first impact point. Needed the gunner to see exactly where that round hit so he could aim the second shot at that precise spot. Needed something that would glow when the gun fired, something that would frame the impact zone like a target grid. The solution came to Hutchins on December 16th while working on the Sherman's engine. His tool bag sat open on the ground. Inside was 20 feet of baling wire, salvaged from a supply crate. Thin, flexible steel wire that farmers used to bind hay bales. Hutchins stared at that wire and suddenly understood. If he welded 4 short pieces of wire to the turret face around the gun mantlet, they'd create a reference grid. When the main gun fired, muzzle flash would light up those wires for a fraction of a second. The wires would glow orange hot, and in that instant, the gunner could see exactly where the shell impacted relative to the wireframe. Hit high right, adjust down left. Hit low left, adjust up right. Simple geometry, farm boy math. If this story's pulling you in, hit that like button right now. It tells YouTube to share this with more people who care about these forgotten heroes. Subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. These stories matter. The men who live them deserve to be remembered. You're part of making that happen. The idea was completely illegal. Welding anything to a tank's exterior without authorization meant court-martial. Modifying equipment that could interfere with the turret rotation was strictly prohibited. Maximum punishment was 5 years in military prison. But Delgado was dead. Foster was dead. 43 crews were dead. Hutchins didn't want to be 44. He worked alone that night. The maintenance area was freezing. December in Belgium meant temperatures below zero. His breath came out in clouds. His fingers were numb inside his gloves. The only light came from a dim work lamp powered by a portable generator that coughed and sputtered in the cold. The Sherman sat in the vehicle park 60 yards from the command post. Hutchins approached it carefully, watching for guards. Unauthorized work on combat vehicles after dark would raise questions he couldn't answer, questions that ended with a court-martial. He climbed onto the hull using the tracks as steps. The metal was ice cold, slippery. His boots almost slipped twice. He pulled the baling wire from inside his coat where he'd been keeping it warm enough to bend. Hutchins needed to weld 4 wire segments to the turret face, positions that would frame the gun mantlet, create a visual reference grid, upper left, upper right, lower left, lower right. Each segment 18 inches long, bent into an L shape, positioned precisely. The welding torch flame was blue in the darkness. Every time he struck an arc, he glanced toward the command post, waiting for someone to investigate. Nobody came. Most officers were asleep. The guards were watching the perimeter, not the vehicle park. Installing the first segment took 20 minutes. The wire had to be positioned exactly. Too high and it would obscure the gunner's vision through the periscope. Too low and it wouldn't frame the impact zone effectively.
Hutchins tested it 3 times, adjusting the angle. His hands were shaking. Not from cold, from knowing that if an officer found him doing this, he'd face charges. Destruction of government property, unauthorized modification, disobeying direct orders. 5 years in Leavenworth. But Foster had screamed on the radio. Delgado had burned while loading shells. The wire might save the next crew. Second segment went faster, 15 minutes. His fingers had found the rhythm. Upper right position, same angle, same careful measurement. Lower left, lower right. By 00300 hours, all 4 segments were installed. Hutchins climbed down, walked 30 yards away, turned to look at his work. In the darkness, the wires were almost invisible, just thin lines of metal against the turret face. They looked like antenna mounts or tie-downs for camouflage netting. Nobody would notice them during a casual inspection. But when the main gun fired, when muzzle flash lit up the turret face for that fraction of a second, those wires would glow bright orange, and the gunner would see exactly where the shell had impacted relative to the wireframe. Simple, stupid, might work, might get Hutchins 5 years in prison. Hutchins cleaned up, hid his tools, walked back to his tent, didn't sleep.
lay in his sleeping bag, thinking about whether the modification would work or whether he just wasted 3 hours on an idea that would get him court-martialed for nothing. At 6:15 hours, Hutchkins heard engines starting. The battalion was preparing for a dawn patrol. Intelligence reported German armor movement near Bastonia. Tigers, probably. The Germans were trying to widen the breach in American lines. Hutchkins' crew climbed into their Sherman at 6:30. His tank commander was Sergeant Bill Cordell. Good officer, calm under fire, had kept them alive through 7 weeks of combat. The gunner was Corporal Samuel Blake. Farm kid from Michigan, steady hands, could hit targets at 1,400 yards. Blake climbed into the gunner's seat, looked through his periscope, froze. Blake's voice came over the intercom, confused. "Sergeant, there's something on the turret, wires or something, 4 of them around the gun." Cordell asked what kind of wires. Blake said he didn't know. They looked like they'd been welded there. Looked almost like a frame around the mantlet. Cordell climbed up, looked, climbed back down, asked Hutchkins directly over the intercom, "Did you do this?" Hutchkins said yes. Explained the whole thing. The stress fractures, the 3-shot kill, the reference grid, how the wires would glow when the gun fired and show Blake exactly where each round hit so he could adjust aim for the follow-up shots. The intercom was silent for 10 seconds.
Then Cordell said, "You know this is court-martial if anyone finds out." Hutchkins said he knew. Cordell said, "If it works, I'll back you. If it doesn't work and we all die, I'll be too dead to care. Button up. We're rolling out in 5. The battalion moved in column formation toward German positions 12 miles east. 18 Shermans spread across 2 miles of Belgian farmland. Fields on both sides, tree lines in the distance, hills to the north. Perfect country for Tigers to hide and ambush American tanks. At 08:43, the radio crackled. Lead tank reported movement ahead. German armor, Tigers, 6 of them. Range 2,000 yards. Too far for Sherman guns to be effective. The battalion commander ordered the column to spread out, find hold-down positions, wait for the Tigers to close distance. Hutchkins' crew found a position behind a low ridge. Cordell scanned with binoculars, called out a Tiger at 1,400 yards, moving left to right across open ground. Blake traversed the turret, found the Tiger in his sight. Too far for a flank shot. The Tiger's side armor was still too thick at that range. Blake would need to hit the frontal armor. Would need to hit the same spot 3 times. Blake said, "I don't have a shot. Can't pen the front." Cordell said, "Take it anyway." "Hutchkins, you ready?" Hutchkins loaded an armor-piercing round, slammed the breech closed, tapped Blake's shoulder. Up. Blake fired. The gun recoiled. The breech opened, hot brass casing ejected, clanging against the turret floor. Smoke filled the compartment. Through his periscope, Blake saw the round hit the Tiger's frontal glacis plate high right. The shell sparked off the armor, didn't penetrate just as expected. But the wires had worked. When the gun fired, muzzle flash lit up the turret face for a fraction of a second. The 4 wire segments glowed bright orange. Blake saw them clearly. Saw the impact point relative to the wire frame. High right, maybe 8 inches above the lower right wire, 6 inches inside from the upper right wire. Blake called out, "I saw it. I see where I hit." Loading another. Hutchkins already had the second round in his hands. He slammed it into the breech, closed it, tapped Blake's shoulder. Up. Blake fired. The gun recoiled. The breech opened, hot brass casing ejected, clanging against the turret floor. Smoke filled the compartment. Through his periscope, Blake saw the round hit the Tiger's frontal glacis plate high right. The shell sparked off the armor. Didn't penetrate just as expected. But the wires had worked. When the gun fired, muzzle flash lit up the turret face for a fraction of a second. The 4 wire segments glowed bright orange. Blake saw them clearly, saw the impact point relative to the wire frame. High right, maybe 8 inches above the lower right wire, 6 inches inside from the upper right wire. Blake called out, "I saw it. I see where I hit." Adjusted for the second shot. Hit the same spot. Third round was already moving. Hutchkins loaded faster than he'd ever loaded in his life. 5 seconds. Breech closed. Tapped Blake's shoulder. Up. Blake fired. The third 75mm armor-piercing round hit the Tiger's frontal armor in the same location as the first 2.
But this time, the weakened steel plate couldn't hold. The round punched through, penetrated the armor, went straight into the Tiger's fighting compartment, and detonated. The Tiger shuddered. Smoke poured from every hatch. The turret hatch blew open. German crewmen tried to bail out. One made it, the rest didn't. Flames shot from the engine deck. The Tiger was dead. Hutchkins' crew had just killed a Tiger from the front, at 1400 yard, something that wasn't supposed to be possible. Cordell's voice came over the intercom, stunned. "Blake, how did you know where to aim?" Blake said, "The wires. They lit up when I fired. I could see exactly where I hit. Adjusted for the second shot, hit the same spot. Third shot went right through." Cordell was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Hutchkins, if we survive this, you and I are having a long conversation about what you did to my tank." The engagement lasted another 30 minutes. Hutchkins' crew engaged 2 more Tigers, killed one using the same technique. 3 shots, same spot, Tiger dies. The other Tiger withdrew before they could get the third shot off. When they returned to the maintenance area that afternoon, 4 other tank commanders were waiting for them. They'd all heard Blake's radio traffic during the battle, heard him talking about the wires, heard him say he could see where his rounds were hitting. The tank commanders wanted to know what Hutchkins had done. Cordell pulled Hutchkins aside, looked at him hard. "You're about to become very popular or very imprisoned. Maybe both. You ready for that?" Hutchkins said he didn't want to be popular. He just wanted crews to stop burning. Cordell said, "Too late. Word's out. You're going to install these wires on every tank in this battalion, whether you want to or not." By December 20th, Hutchkins had installed wire frames on 14 Shermans. He worked alone at night, welding by dim worklight, watching for officers. Other loaders started helping, men who had lost friends to Tigers, men who understood what those 4-wire segments meant. The modification spread tank to tank, crew to crew. Hutchins showed other mechanics how to do it. Position the wires precisely, frame the gun mantle it, create a reference grid. When the gun fires, the wires glow, and suddenly your gunner can see exactly where he's hitting. 1 week after Hutchkins installed the first wire frame, the 9th Armored Division engaged German forces near Bastonia. Again, 12 Tigers versus 20 Shermans. American crews destroyed 8 Tigers, lost 2 Shermans. The kill ratio had reversed. German tank commanders couldn't understand what had changed. American Shermans were suddenly hitting the same spot on German armor multiple times. It was like American gunners had developed superhuman precision. Radio intercepts showed German crews reporting American tanks were using some kind of new aiming system. They were half right.